After an uneven console cycle with the Xbox One, Microsoft's latest consoles are aimed at getting the ship back on course. The Xbox Series X is a next-generation powerhouse that rivals gaming PCs, while the Xbox Series S is an affordable stopgap for those who are curious about trying new games. There's no shortage of games to play on either console thanks to Xbox Game Pass, which gives players immediate access to a library of titles old and new. That built-in catalog is an extra value on top of all the new games available on the system that take advantage of its impressive technical specs. When it comes to first-party exclusives, the Series X is still growing. Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5 gave a good boost to the console's library following a somewhat sparse first year. More games are also on the way. Microsoft's Bethesda acquisition will bring exclusives like Starfield, and the potential addition of all Activision Blizzard games would further bolster that list, but the console's real strength lies in third-party support. We've combed through the current batch of new Xbox games to put together an updated running list of titles that new console owners shouldn't miss. And don't forget to check out the best upcoming Xbox Series X games as well. Resident Evil 4. Before you jump in for your hit of nostalgia, you should know that this isn't 2005's Resident Evil 4. Instead of putting out a shot-for-shot remake, a truly transformative remake that isn't afraid to throw out what didn't work and put its own creative spin on everything from story to level design to its wildly improved combat. Capcom delivers everything you want and more in this stellar revisit to one of the most iconic titles in the Resident Evil series. Call of Duty: Modern Warfare 2. While this year's Call of Duty installment is a bit of a mixed bag of gorgeous visuals and classic multiplayer despite pacing issues and some ugly UI choices, Call of Duty: Modern Warfare 2 gives COD fans what they want, another COD game. If fast-paced warfare and detailed weapon customization are your jam, this is the first-person shooter for you. Overwatch 2. Overwatch 2, the not-so-new and definitely improved free-to-play Overwatch sequel, has given the series new life for hardcore fans and newcomers alike. New heroes Junker Queen and Sojourn have joined the fight, old heroes have learned new skills, and there are already new character releases on the horizon. Overwatch 2's specific brand of objective-based shooter isn't for everyone, but if it's up your alley you'll be playing this title well into the new year. Halo Infinite. The staggered release of campaign and multiplayer was an odd move, but both turned out far better than initial impressions suggested. A few of us were lucky enough to see just how good this game was shaping up based on the test periods, but now the competitive mode that will determine Halo Infinite's long-term life is out and, quite frankly, amazing. This game brings it back to the old style of shooter Halo used to be known for instead of trying to follow along with trends set by other games in the genre. As an arena shooter, this game feels like the true sequel to Halo 3's multiplayer that fans have been wanting for over a decade. Marvel's Midnight Suns. Marvel's Midnight Suns is a strategy RPG that follows both iconic Avengers characters and more obscure supernatural ones as they take on Lilith, Mother of Demons. The card-based action is surprisingly in-depth and you can walk around and mingle with the other heroes between missions. If you're a Marvel fan, the films or the comic books, you'll love exploring this world with the huge cast of heroes and villains. Hitman 3. Over the past few years, IO Interactive has been knocking it out of the park with its Hitman series. The stealth action game got a huge boost of adrenaline in 2016 with the first game in a sort of rebooted trilogy called World of Assassination. Hitman introduced an ingenious puzzle element to the long-running series, allowing players to find creative and outrageous ways to take out targets. The series has only stayed consistent since, and now Hitman 3 offers a perfect capper to the trilogy. Hitman 3 doesn't shake the formula up in many ways, instead opting to double down on what's made the previous games so enjoyable. The levels are better than ever, offering sprawling sandboxes filled with challenges and surprises. The game's murder mystery Dartmoor level is especially noteworthy, bringing a classic whodunit movie setup to the game. Hitman 3 essentially acts as a house for all three games as players can import progress and levels from Hitman and Hitman 2, making it a must-own, complete edition of the series. Destiny 2. While the Halo franchise changed hands, the original creators at Bungie still show their mastery of the FPS genre with their new IP in Destiny. Destiny 2 has evolved over the years to become one of the most popular games as a service shooter on the market. That success is held up, through some ups and downs of content and company choices, purely on the back of how solid and fun the gunplay is. As an FPS, Destiny 2 just feels so good to play, which is the most important thing for most players. You have tons of PvE content, especially now with so many expansions out, plus the more traditional PvP modes if you want to go head-to-head. Control Ultimate Edition. Control was a massive fan favorite when it originally launched in 2019. Remedy Entertainment's off-kilter action game offered some mind-bending telekinesis in a bizarre story straight out of Twin Peaks. The game even landed a coveted Game of the Year nomination at the 2019 Game Awards. Now, next general console owners can get an Ultimate Edition of the game, which contains all of its DLC in one package. Control Ultimate Edition frankly makes the game even better. While the original Control suffered from some tech hiccups and an unstable framerate, the next general version runs much more smoothly. New tech means that the game looks better than ever too, thanks to ray tracing. For players who missed out the first time around, the next general version is a perfect excuse to jump back into one of the more inventive AAA games to launch in the past few years. Resident Evil Village 2021. After a pair of remakes, which alone are fantastic, Capcom went back to the FPS style of Resident Evil 7 for their first entry on next general systems. A direct sequel to 7, Resident Evil Village isn't quite as horror-focused as its predecessor, but takes a more balanced approach to action and scares in an attempt to feel somewhat like fan-favorite Resident Evil 4. The titular village is your hub and will open up more and more as you progress the story and collect new weapons and tools to unlock areas. There's a great cast of villains here, along with some revelations about longtime series staples. It's a tight, focused, and varied thrill ride from start to finish. High on Life. From the creators of the hit animated sci-fi show Rick and Morty, High on Life is a surprising shooter that delivers a fun, space-wide adventure with that classic hit-or-miss Justin Roiland humor. The story finds a nameless protagonist and their sister flung in the middle of an alien conflict while their parents are on vacation. We won't spoil the story here, but it's a lovely little adventure full of hijinks, shootouts, and in-jokes. Diablo 4. Diablo 4 brings the series back to its roots with a darker tone and aesthetic while also keeping the combat and looting grind as enthralling as ever. Diablo's Sanctuary is rich with grisly lore, and this has never been more apparent than in Diablo 4. The big villains are ambiguous in their motives but decidedly evil in their methods, and they're played brilliantly throughout the campaign. Moreover, the graphical fidelity, music, and sound design are all top tier, which is surprising given its frustrating always online nature. Elden Ring. The hype surrounding Elden Ring was the highest any Souls game ever had, and somehow, the team at From Software managed to exceed all expectations. On every level, this game broke new ground. It was the team's first open-world title, yet reinvigorated the genre in a way not seen since Breath of the Wild, but taken to an even greater level. The Souls-style combat is as fluid and satisfying as ever, dungeons are crafted with delicate care and precision, bosses are challenging and unique, and the game never feels like it's repeating itself. There are dozens of weapon types, spells, incantations, and ways to build your character that make this one game somehow stand at the pinnacle of action RPGs, open-world games, and the Souls genre. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is a sequel to 2019's excellent Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and expands on it in almost every way. The story feels more ambitious and personal at the same time, as all of the world's players can explore as Cal are more densely packed with content than before, and combat has been refined to be even more fun thanks to new stances and perks players can use. It's an entirely single-player Star Wars adventure, and a meaty one at that. This game can easily keep you entertained for 20 hours or more and tells the most engaging Star Wars narrative since Andor. This is one of the best Star Wars games ever made, so fans of the franchise shouldn't miss out on it. Sea of Thieves. One of the earliest games to come to Game Pass, Sea of Thieves was heavily criticized at launch for, pardon the pun, bare-bones content. So many years and seasons deep, however, and the game has managed to gain a new lease on life. There are dozens of activities, cosmetics, features, and content for solo players and groups to take on. It has become the quintessential pirate simulator, but with that charm and slightly humorous, carefree style that developer Rare is known for. You're free to play it as seriously or as casually as you like, and diving in now, you have plenty of things to discover with your crew. No other game has nailed the real feeling of being a pirate, and while this game initially didn't hit the mark either, it is certainly a sea worth sailing today. Scarlet Nexus. No one would blame you if you mistook Scarlet Nexus for a Platinum Games project. The action RPG features the kind of fast, complex combat that you'd expect from something like Bayonetta or Vanquish. The game's futuristic police force setting also makes it feel like a long-lost cousin to Astral Chain. The game actually comes from developer Bandai Namco, which has delivered a stylish hidden gem with a wild, twisting narrative and intense fights to match. The main hook of Scarlet Nexus is that players can use telekinesis to hurl objects at enemies, not unlike Control. That goes hand in hand with fast-paced slashing, which allows players to rack up some astonishing combos. The complexity doesn't stop there. Players can bring along allies, each of which has a different elemental power that augments the standard moveset. One ally may add electric powers to your moveset, while another can temporarily slow down time. The joy of Scarlet Nexus is seeing how all of those little abilities can come together and interact to create a ballet of colorful action. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The next generation of consoles started as big as possible thanks to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The Series 10's launch title is an open-world behemoth that amps up everything the Assassin's Creed franchise has to offer with a Viking twist. With a main story that'll keep players occupied for over 60 hours and a seemingly endless list of activities to complete, it's the kind of game that can be played for months on end. There's a lot to enjoy in Assassin's Creed Valhalla due to its wealth of systems. Whether it's building a settlement, discovering organic quests throughout the world, or crafting the ultimate raiding machine, the game offers a lot for players to sink their teeth into. Not every mechanic totally hits its mark, but few really miss either. The result is a sprawling epic built for the kind of players who just want to lose themselves in a game world. Like a Dragon, Ishin, a remake of 2014's Ryu ga Gotoku Ishin, released only in Japan. Like a Dragon, Ishin, takes place in 1867, during Japan's regime-changing Bakumatsu era, and stars Sakamoto Ryoma, a character resembling former Like a Dragon series protagonist Kazuma Kiryu. This new to the West Like a Dragon installment will be a romp for longtime fans and newcomers alike. Yakuza. Like a Dragon. Sega's Yakuza series has been on the rise for quite some time. The niche franchise gained steady popularity in recent years just in time for Yakuza, Like a Dragon to usher in next-generation consoles. What once was a weird oddity is now an ace in the hole for Microsoft thanks to high critical praise that made it one of the next generation's most talked about launch games. Unlike previous Yakuza games, Like a Dragon trades in beat-em-up action for turn-based combat. Players put together a party of 4 characters who brawl together in battle and can use the environment to their advantage. While that core concept is a departure for the franchise, it still retains its signature wackiness with unpredictable missions and side quests. For players who have never played a Yakuza game before, Like a Dragon is a perfect jumping-off point that starts a fresh chapter for the franchise. Immortals Fenyx Rising. Ubisoft has become synonymous with open-world games over the past decade. Franchises like Assassin's Creed continually set the bar higher and higher for the genre with gigantic worlds chock full of content. While there is no shortage of options to choose from when it comes to Ubisoft's vast catalog, Immortals Fenyx Rising shouldn't be overlooked. While its name isn't as well known as some of the studio's more established games, the new IP could be the company's most exciting new franchise in years. Immortals Fenyx Rising is Assassin's Creed meets The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Building on Zelda's free-roaming mobility, the game is all about offering players more fluid and rewarding exploration. That means that the game is less about following a checklist of map activities and more about seeking out and discovering the world's secrets. It's a vibrant, funny game that playfully uses Greek mythology to create an entertaining open-world experience that gives Breath of the Wild fans something new to try. Tunic. If there's one franchise just about everyone wants but can only get on one console, it's Nintendo's Zelda titles. While we can't actually get the official adventures of the tunic-wearing hero of Hyrule, we can get games heavily inspired by them, with one of the best being Tunic. This game has you take control of a little fox in a green, tunic, wielding a sword and shield. If you imagine Link, only with fox features, that's the main character. And the inspiration doesn't just stop at the visual design, but the gameplay, too. You explore a big, confusing world full of puzzles and monsters to fight while learning the distinct language of the land. The twist of collecting the game's manual in the game itself is a simple but fantastic way to really engross you in the experience. Pentiment. In a year that lacked many compelling Xbox Series 10 exclusives, Pentiment stands out as a narrative-focused adventure RPG set in 16th-century Europe. Sporting a unique art style and engaging story for murder, mystery, and impactful choices, Pentiment is one of the best games published by Xbox Game Studios in some time. It's a bit subtler on the RPG front with its persuasion system and character backgrounds, but it should appeal to fans of that genre just as much as it would to adventure game fans. Psychonauts 2. Psychonauts 2 was an important test for Microsoft. Despite the fact that the game was set to launch on PC and PlayStation, Microsoft positioned it as an Xbox exclusive. Microsoft owns developer Double Fine, so it's technically a first-party game. As such, it launched day one on Xbox Game Pass, making it one of the Series 10's most enticing year one releases. If it could live up to the hype of its predecessor, that would be a defining game for the service ahead of Microsoft's major holiday push. Fortunately, it got the job done. Psychonauts 2 is an excellent platformer that's every bit as good as the original cult classic, if not better. While it contains some familiar platforming mechanics, Double Fine turned up the heat for the sequel with more inventive level design and sincerely moving storytelling. Psychonauts 2 may look like an irreverent 1990s cartoon, but it's a narratively ambitious game that depicts different mental health struggles with empathy. It functions both as a positive learning experience for kids and a relatable one for adults. It Takes Two. It Takes Two might be the best multiplayer game of its kind. The two-player adventure game is a labor of love by Hazelight Studios and director Joseph Fares. Rather than pitting players against each other, it's a pure co-op game in which players solve puzzles and platform together. Each level features entirely new mechanics that keep things fresh throughout the 12-hour adventure. It's a game that was designed from the ground up with multiplayer in mind, and that shows. Good co-op games are hard to come by. While there are tons of multiplayer games out there, few ask players to work together to progress through an authored story. It Takes Two is a rare example of a game that cares about multiplayer mechanics as much as it cares about narrative. The story is a romantic comedy about a couple on the verge of divorce who are turned into tiny dolls. They must work together to both get back to normal and repair their relationship. It's a clever narrative framework that pairs perfectly with a genre that's built on good communication and cooperation between players. It's a multiplayer game that'll save your friendships, not destroy them. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. If you ever wanted to play a Metroidvania that looked like a painting in motion, there's no other choice but Ori and the Will of the Wisps. As if the majestic art style and surprisingly touching story weren't enough reason to pick this game up, the fact that the Series 10 can push it to run at a stunning 4K resolution and hold 120 frames per second is just icing on the cake. This sequel is a full-on improvement over the great first title, with a large world to explore, new moves to learn, and more bosses to overcome. If you're a fan of the Metroidvania genre, this indie title proves that even a smaller team can create a game that feels as polished and rewarding as any big-budget studio. Street Fighter VI. Street Fighter VI feels like the most significant revelation for the fighting game genre since Street Fighter II. No matter the skill level, all types of players will find something to enjoy here. The core fighting gameplay felt as amazing to play as ever, bolstered by a flashy new drive gauge system. Those who enjoy the series for its hardcore, competitive elements will like that, as well as its multiplayer battle hub mode. That said, Street Fighter VI is also the friendliest fighting game ever for newcomers to the genre. New modern controls, as well as a meaty RPG World Tour mode that teaches the ins and outs of many of the game's characters and mechanics, means there's a ton of enjoyment to be had no matter one's skill level. Forza Horizon 5. The Forza Horizon style of racing game almost perfectly rides the line between being a racing simulator and a pick-up-and-play, arcade-style game. The latest entry, Forza Horizon 5, brings the open-world racer into Mexico to show off some of the most beautiful environments and cars ever displayed by a console. Seriously, this game is worth the price just to look at how gorgeous it is. The fact that you get perhaps the best racing game ever crafted on top of that is almost unreal. The game runs buttery smooth at either 30 or 60 FPS depending on what settings you prefer and has hours of content to race through. Crusader Kings 3. Grand strategy games are few and far between, and your options are even more limited if you play on console. That's why it's such a treat that we not only got Crusader Kings 3 in the first place, but that it was also able to make its way onto your Series 10. This game takes simulating a medieval kingdom to the extreme. You can use diplomacy, war, sabotage, and other political tactics to overcome just about any conflict. That level of depth does come with a very steep learning curve, especially if you're unfamiliar with the genre. Thankfully, the controller support is great, and you can take the game at any pace you want. Once you get deep into it, the things that can happen, by your choice or not, will be unlike anything you thought a game could even do. Microsoft Flight Simulator. When Microsoft Flight Simulator first launched in 2020, it wasn't the most easily accessible game. Even the beefiest of computers could still struggle with the gargantuan game. While it was critically hailed as one of 2020's best games, it seemed like a lot of players wouldn't really get to experience it until it hit the Xbox Series 10. It finally touched down on the next general system 1 year later via Game Pass, and it was certainly worth the wait. The Xbox Series 10 is the best way to play Microsoft Flight Simulator. Part of that is out of necessity more than anything. When I tried to run it on my PC, it was like watching a slideshow, and that was with a GeForce GTX 1070 installed. The Xbox Series 10 version eliminates the variables that come with trying to run a game on any old PC by optimizing it for consistent tech. While some diehards may wish they had a mouse and keyboard, or a full flight setup, playing on a controller simplifies the flying experience. The whole game just feels less complicated overall, which is great news, because flying is complex enough as is. Tetris Effect. Connected. After all these decades, Tetris is still a perfect puzzle game. Clearing 4 rows of blocks with one straight tetromino piece is still the most satisfying experience in gaming. While several games have found clever ways to play with the formula, see Tetris 99 or Puyo Puyo Tetris, Tetris Effect is hands down the most gorgeous way to experience the game. Originally released on PlayStation 4 with an excellent VR mode, the Xbox version brings the game's trippy visuals to the Series 10. Players essentially play through rounds filled with aesthetically pleasing visuals and music, making it the perfect chill-out game. The Xbox version features new multiplayer options, hence the connected moniker, bringing co-op and competitive play to the game. While it lacks the VR component that made the original release a hit, it's still a pleasing puzzler filled with good vibes. Gears Tactics. The Gears of War franchise has always been known for its fast-paced action and larger-than-life gunplay. So it might be surprising to hear that Gears Tactics, a spin-off of the popular shooter series, is a turn-based strategy game where players methodically plot out attacks. Surprisingly, the genre flip isn't as drastic as it might sound. This is still very much a Gears of War game, complete with cover-based shooting, oversized weapons, and hordes of aliens. Compared to other strategy games, Gears Tactics is much heavier on action. Enemies spawn frequently and players can do much more in one turn than just move and fire one shot. For those who love the Gears universe, it's a fresh take on the franchise that reimagines the pace of a strategy game.